Welcome back to my channel. I want to share with you from the last video that I was talking to you. I was talking about assigned seating to minimize the disruptions and maximize learning in the classroom. So this is part of my series called Classroom Management. So in this series, I want to talk to you about how to really gain power in your classroom for with assigned seating. So as I said in the last video, I basically covered how assigned seating is pretty much what I use from day one to establish classroom order in my class. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about the different methods that I'm using to assign seating, provide maybe different examples for you. And pretty much, if you really haven't heard anything about this before with classroom management for the first week of school, maybe you want to go back and see that first video that I have. The link will be provided in the description. So one of the ways that I organize my class is I actually do alphabetical order. So I have done that for years, provided alphabetical order for the students, sitting them in the classroom. There's a pro to that. One, I always felt that, right away I could learn the students' names and it would be an easy way to access the students, alphabetical order. Pretty much all the paperwork that usually comes in for students is alphabetical. Or maybe if I was trying to figure out how many kids in the class, I know I can go to, okay, all my letters go up to letter K, etc. So that I have certain 20-something kids in the class. So it always has been an easy way to arrange a classroom. Pretty much, I want to say a typical way to arrange a classroom. That's a pro. It's easy to arrange. Students pretty much also know the alphabetical order because maybe they've even traveled with some of the students. Here's where the con comes in. Just like I said, students have come with other students. Maybe they have traveled that way with students throughout their school years. So a con for alphabetical order, I find, is that students who already know each other might be sitting next to each other. Sometimes I have students who've been in gifted programs or different type of programs, and they have sat next to that same friend since kindergarten. So you could have, by the time I see them in ninth grade, you could have a student they could be a great partner to that student, supporting them, or it could be a nemesis to them where that student is actually tired of that person that's sat next to. So sometimes that could be a con by sitting your students in alphabetical order. Another con that I find with alphabetical order is that students have different accommodations, so when you arrange them in alphabetical order, you're not really accommodating the different educational needs that a student might have, and other teachers might be using that same alphabetical order. So even if it's not from first grade, that student might be sitting next to that same student all day long, and by the time they see you in your eighth period class, they've had enough. So some other examples that I have in my alphabetical order problems is that I do run across a lot of times in my classes that I actually have twins, or I have students who are relatives, like a first cousin might be in the class with their cousin. So as a result, by sitting them together in class, again, that could become a problem. So alphabetical order, I want to say, is not the ideal way to organize your classroom, but it is one of the ways that you can organize the classroom maybe efficiently and effectively initially to learn student names. Another way that I organize my classroom is what I call by test scores or grades. So never first, let me just say this, preface this. Never do I tell the students I'm sitting you according to your grade or I'm sitting you according to your test scores. Matter of fact, in all the years that I've actually done this, students never have figured out why they're sitting in the front or why they're sitting in the back. The pro to using that idea of test scores, and this is where I start when I start my classrooms in the beginning of the year, I look at what their test scores were last year. So if I have students who are low on the scale, the assessment scales, or low in the scores that they have already, it helps me to be able to have access to them easily. Also, for other students to be supportive of them, they also learn that they can have peer support, my learning, and it's also an easy way to create groups. Now, what I would suggest when I use students in test scores, I always sit my students what I call quads. So even if I have low test score students towards the front, I may at times, have that quad. Maybe that's a low test score, but maybe the next group is actually students who are a little bit higher. So it's not necessarily homogeneous test scores necessarily. It depends on the students' different abilities that I see. The other thing I want to say about test scores is that when students have gotten back those test scores, and it tells you, well, in my state it does, it tells you the different domains or different standards the student is achieving in. So this is another good way of organizing your classroom, by having students who are maybe in a certain topic or a subject area, like students in poetry, they may be struggling. So maybe all those students in that little area are in that domain, have need for that support. And then maybe another group will have another need, another support. So it's a pro to that. It's easy to create the groups. You can do it quickly. It can also ways you can assist students, and it provides a great way for students to support each other. I always tell students, this is part of your community, so you should help your community in that little quad. A con to that is that you might constantly be rearranging. Now, I already decided in the beginning of the year, and I share with my students, that your seed is not permanent. If it works out, great, you'll have it for this 9 weeks maybe. But if it doesn't work out, maybe before the 9 weeks is up, you'll have a new seed. Or for sure, for me, by the next marking period, the student scores are different. So in the second marking period, I'm not really using their test scores from their assessments. I might be looking more at their actual grades in my class. So even if the test score said, hey, this student's like top of the scale, 5, but maybe in my class, the student's really getting like an average grade, like a C, that could actually be a problem for them. So maybe I need to move them closer to the front of the classroom. So that could be a constant thing that if you're not comfortable with constantly moving students or arranging student classrooms, then that can be a con for a person. Students also get a chance to see other students in the classroom. That's a definite pro for me. But students may, if they ever did figure it out, maybe they would feel bad. I've had students tell me that, when I arranged a classroom and they were in the front, and that was because the student went from like maybe a B in my class to probably like a D or an F. I moved that student towards the front, and they realized when their grades went up, actually in the next marking period, I actually moved them towards the back of the class. And I can remember that student specifically saying to me, or even sharing with their friends too, that I was doing better in the front. When I sit back here with you guys, I get very distracted and I'm not able to do my work. So I think I need to ask the teacher, can I move to the front? So if a student asks me to move closer to the front because they have different needs that they feel like they need to be addressed, or they feel like they are focused better in the front, I do actually honor that. I don't just say, sit down, this is my rules, and go sit down. But I do ask that students, if they have a area that they realize, hey, I was working better in the front, I was working better over here, I do take into consideration when I set up the new seating arrangement. Another way that I organize classrooms is according to gender. So one thing I want to keep in mind is that when students interact with other students, it gives them sort of another way to interact with other students of of the different genders. So, for example, it helps people balance their behaviors. Sometimes you have a talkative group of boys, or you may have a talkative, quiet group of girls. So if you mix it up, it always actually balances out the other gender within that group. So that's definitely a pro to have gender. I never actually have an all boys group or an all girls group, unless, of course, I've run out of boys and girls in the classroom and I'm forced to do that. I tend to have 2 boys, 2 girls, or, mixed within a group. I also pretty much have groups sitting in sort of like quads, as I said before. So a con could be, of course, like I said, you could run out of the boys or the girls in the classroom to arrange the gender. I've had classrooms where there's probably like 20 boys and 3 girls or 4 girls, and that becomes a problem. So depending on the situation that you have, it also could be more of a distraction or frustration. For example, a girl may end up, maybe she's in a group with all boys and she's the one girl. She might feel a little bit of pressure because now she's in a group with all boys and she's the only girl in the class, and only girl in that group. So maybe she's feeling like, okay, I can't really share. Oh, I feel like I'm doing all the work. Sometimes, unfortunately, when you get the kids sitting as boys and one girl, sometimes the girl all of a sudden becomes this secretary. And I always ask them, did you ask to do that? Or did someone volunteer that? So you have to watch that also. So it could be definitely a pro, for they make students interact with other kids that they probably normally would not associate with, and that's actually definitely a plus for the class. When we look at educational needs of students, you always have to keep in mind that students who need extra help or need have special accommodations, you provide that by how you're sitting them in a classroom. So if they need added assistance, or they need maybe an attention that has to be addressed, by sitting in the front of the class, you actually minimize their distraction. The other thing, when you have students with different needs, that might be they have to be away from being distracted, you don't want to really put them towards the door of the classroom, you know. So a lot of times I have students who are easily distracted. I sit them maybe towards the middle in the front of the classroom, or maybe on the right side, near closer to my side of the room, not near the um, actual door. So there, really, I don't see any cons in that, because when you have a student with a plan, the con is, the con would be that you don't address that plan, and that actually could be a problem for a student in their actual learning plan. So you definitely have educational needs can be addressed by having the students sit in assigned seats in the classroom. So then I have also students that might have actual behavior needs. So difficult students, I find that I always like to give a difficult student, I either give them an assignment in the class. I don't mean like a paper assignment. I mean, for example, I've had students who basically they like to get up and move. They want to move. They're kinetic kind of people. They need to get involved. They need to do something. So that student might be sitting more towards the door area. So maybe they can run errands, or maybe they can, hey, I'll answer the door. So different things that actually can help them in their own behavior needs that they have. It also minimizes them from being more distracting to the rest of the class, where they want to get up and move around a lot, and other students are pretty much sitting in their seats that they've been assigned. So depending on the situations, it also gives a student actual buy-in in the class. Like I've asked students that, okay, you address those. If someone comes to the door, you have to make sure they have the pass. And I give that student a special assignment. So it actually empowers that student in the classroom, and not make them feel like they're sitting at the door as a punishment area. A con to a new seating arrangement may be that you can't really resolve all your behavioral issues. I've had classes where there's several different students with different behavioral problems and issues, and the new seating arrangement may not able to accommodate all those students. So depending on the scenario that you might have in your classroom, or behavior issues in your classroom, you could actually have more of a problem, because sometimes I've had students like, okay, well, that student has been sitting in the front, his grade hasn't really improved. So let me see if I move him towards another area. But in that same area, I have other students who are also struggling. So moving a student away from other students who distract them, or moving overactive students near the door to keep them busy, can be a good way of trying to minimize some of the problems that you would have in your class. Um, you definitely don't want all your behavior issues or behavioral students problems sitting in one area of a classroom. I try to strategically move them around the different places of the classroom, so that way at least they're not actually, I guess, um, I don't know, feeding off each other by being as a group in the class like that. So I definitely don't necessarily have all my behavioral issues in one class, or one area of the classroom. I know last year I had a couple of students that one was near towards the door, another one was like on the side, more closer to my desk, another one's in the middle. And someone might say, well, all the behavior issues, but because they're actually what I call not in their own neighborhood, because they're not really next to the friend that they normally would do different things with, they actually end up either getting quiet about it, or doing better, or realizing it's not going to work right now. So I use that expression, putting a kid out of his neighborhood, meaning that if you have been with the same type of kids all the time, and you basically, maybe the teacher said, oh, all the bad kids are in that little area, you are in your own neighborhood. But when you get out of your neighborhood, you actually are being put out of the place where you normally will feel comfortable, and other students around surrounding you actually aren't someone you usually communicate with. So it actually makes you feel like you're not in the neighborhood. As a result, you might respond differently to being in that spot, and to do better in the class. So, like I said, with behavior issues, behavioral problems, I will kind of weigh it out as I go, but I would never sit my behavioral problems in the same area of a class. I would also make sure that they are minimized with disruptions or distractions in the class. It helps them to stay on task. It helps them to get focused. Sometimes it's just by having a kid sitting more towards the middle of the class, in the front where the screen or the classroom board is at. It actually helps them to get better focus in the class, and not to be distracted with other things in the classroom. And here's some of the ideas also, like putting this all together. So I use really a combination of seating arrangements in my class. I use test scores. I use the actual grades the students might get in my class. I look at their gender and seeing how we can have maybe two boys, two girls in a group, situating them that way. I look at the students' educational needs based on maybe a special plan that they have. And I also consider behavioral issues that I might run across. Now, sometimes, like I say, just like anything when you first started out, it always seems wonderful. So when we first start school, generally, I want to say students are good. Maybe by the second week, sometime unfortunately you have students the second day, you start really seeing some of the issues that comes up, because maybe this is really who the student is. Sometimes you may not even see it to the third week of school. So based on how something might start changing, I can rearrange my classes. Maybe that week I can change my class, but I definitely change my class seating arrangement every quarter so that students can be on their toes. It gives them a chance to meet other students in the class. It helps to build community in the class. And it gives opportunity for students who always want to be in the front or always want to be in the back. I'll give them a chance to be there also. So unless a student really asks me, I don't tell the students why I moved them. I don't say, when students say to me, why do I have to move? And usually I say, well, I'm trying to help you. Let's see if you can find a way to focus better. I've had a student recently say, well, I wanted to sit next to, this girl over there, and she was helping me. And I said, well, really, it's not her job to always be helping you, but coming over this way, I can help you better. And this group here is more available to help you. So having a student in the right place can actually transform their behavior in my classes. I've noticed their class performance improves. Sometimes students realize that they learn more about themselves by being in a different place in the classroom, because normally when a student comes into the room, I want to say, first of all, a lot of students like to sit in the back, right? Everybody's running to the back. But if they've always been that kind of student, maybe if they got an opportunity to sit towards the front or sit towards the middle, they start realizing that this is better for them to perform in the classroom. So I thank you for stopping by and listening and hearing some things that might be very helpful for you as a teacher in the classroom. And I hope that these videos can be a way to support you in this process. Thank you from the Practical Teacher.